What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Shelby of Royal Horses. Thank you so much for being here, man. It's great to have Royal Horses on here.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, it's so cool to have you here. So, you released the new single "Time Wounds All Heals," which it's a great sounding song. Excellent work on that. Is this like at all have any relation to your last full length album, A Modern Man's Way to Improve, or is this kind of like a one off thing, or maybe like a good little preview of what's in store for Royal Horses?
I think maybe it's a little bit of a preview. It's definitely kind of different from the sounds we got on the first record, but we've got two other singles coming out that were recorded at the same time as that song, and I think you'll see the similarity between those three songs.
Okay. And is there like are you planning to like for the next full-length album to make like a direct continuation of A Modern Man's Way to Improve, or are you kind of like stepping more into uncharted territory for the next album?
The music's gotten darker. You know, there's more space, and I think we're just getting better at writing songs, really. But yeah, it's gonna be different the next album, whenever that happens.
Hmm. Is there a preconceived idea like where you was it a original plan to make it darker, or did it kind of just like happen that way?
Just happened that way, and I guess 2020 maybe contributed to that, but it
Without
just
a doubt.
happened.
Yeah, especially. I mean, I find it funny too because listening to A Modern Man's Way to Improve that that had a great laid back sort of rock vibe behind it. It was fairly more optimistic and like a little more of like a party vibe behind it. But even with the rock and roll bands that are all about like the rock, even they're fucking pissed off at the way that the world is turning. So, you, I,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, watch Greta Van Fleet turn into death metal for their next album.
That would be interesting.
Eh, stranger things have happened, right?
Somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah. Now, do you always like enter the songwriting process though with like a preconceived idea, like kind of going back to the last question, or is there kind of like a lot of improvising involved and maybe like a lot of trial and error in the songwriting process?
In the initial songwriting process, I would say there's hardly ever like a maybe I have an idea like, oh, I'd like to write a song about this or whatever, but usually when we get to the studio, there tends to be a lot of just coming up with stuff on the spot. We'll have like the bones of the song, but a lot of times it'll be the first time that the rest of the band has played the song at all is when we're in the studio trying to work out what we want to record, you know?
Yeah, you don't really
And
know. Oh,
that, sorry about the plane,
yeah,
uh, that causes it to be a lot of improvising and just trying to be creative on the spot, you know?
yeah, and you really don't know how it is going to sound until you're jamming it together with the rest of the band, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, you have an idea, you know. I can come up with a riff and have a general sense of what Daniel would play, but sometimes he surprises me.
Yeah. And being a vocalist, has there ever been a time where maybe lyrics or a concept can determine like the outcome of the music in a way? Or has music always needed to be there before any lyrics would come?
No, I mean, the lyrics have come first sometimes. It happens both ways. Sometimes the music's first, sometimes the lyrics are first. Sometimes you get really lucky and you just sit down and it all comes out at once and you don't even have to do any work. But most of the time for me, the music comes first. And then I'll sort of gauge what that music makes me feel and then approach the lyrics from that feeling.
Hmm. And do you say that every song that you have written is like representative of a particular emotion you were feeling at that time, or like, or do you kind of like feel more as you hear more?
Some of it's based on emotions, some of it's ideas or things that I like, you know, or like we've got a song on the next record that came. The whole thing happened just because I had been listening to a lot of like the old school hill country. Well, not really hill country blues, but just the finger picking country blues stuff. And the lyrics, like They're pretty simple. They're nothing fancy, or they're not very deep, you know. But so that song's not really based around an emotion. I guess it's more of just a general musical theme of that country blues.
Hmm.
I'm kind of getting off from the question, but
No, no, no. You're doing great. You're doing great.
not all of them are based on emotions, but some of them are.
Yeah. Like, and does inspiration sort of like come out of the blues sometimes for your songwriting process, or do you kind of have like a usual go-to place, or like have a usual creative realm that you need to go into in order for the ideas to flow?
It definitely helps me to be like alone and to write songs, but sometimes it'll just happen randomly when I'm in the car, even maybe in the van with the band or something like that.
Hmm. Like sometimes when you least expect it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to like, do you, because you have, I feel like, you have a lot of old school sounds in it, in your style in a way. So were you mainly looking at like older classic rock as your inspiration, or has there been like a lot of modern acts that have also influenced the sound of Royal Horses?
Not much modern music. At least not the stuff that everybody would be familiar with. You know, there's a lot of players that are, you know, I mean, they're modern players. They're playing now that live in the southeastern part of the country that have inspired me a lot, but they're not that well known. You know, so most of the stuff that everybody knows, yeah, it comes from the '70s classic rock and the blues from that time and before that, and then country music also, like older country music. I love.
Yeah, country and rock. Like a lot of people talk about them like they're two completely separate genres, but really, when you boil it down, I feel like country and rock are really do come from like a similar place. You know?
Absolutely, yeah. It all comes from a similar place, I guess, but that I guess they meet somewhere around Americana, you know.
More or less. I've always wondered though, like rock has had its origin stories. Like where it first originated from. I was always curious to where like country sort of like originated from in a way. Was it taking inspiration from rock at the time, or was it taking inspiration from classical when it started?
Probably probably the classical thing. Um I don't know. I you know, as far as like country of origin or whatever, I guess it's a something that came out of the United States originally.
Yeah, definitely. And when it comes to like playing your material live, like is there a similar energy that you put into your live presence as you do when you're songwriting, or do you consider them two completely separate arts altogether?
They're similar in a lot of ways, but you know, I don't. It is a very different experience to play live from playing in the studio or sitting and trying to write a song. I like playing live the most.
Yeah, and like, do you feel like as a front man that like you have to practice crowd interaction and stage presence as much as you have to like practice the song in itself in a way, or is that something that just comes naturally as you do it more and more?
It didn't come naturally to me at first, but it, like you just said, the more I've done it, the better I've got at it. And at this point, it's just, you know, you're having a conversation with other human beings. So putting too much thought into it is where I went sometimes, you know.
Oh, really? In what way?
I guess you don't, you know, you're thinking, oh, what can I say that's going to sound cool or something like that. But that's not important. It's just important to, you know, talk to the people that are there enjoying the music. And also trying to be funny. I've gotten better at that over time.
Uh,
Sometimes I'll hit the mark.
so before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just anything else with Royal Horses that you would like to promote with like when we could be expecting the new singles and stuff?
So our next single is going to be coming out in May, I believe. It's going to be a song called Cabbage. So look out for that. You can find us on all the social media platforms and stuff. And thank you for having me, man. Thanks for taking the time to ask us some questions.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Everybody, we are here with Royal Horses. Be sure to check out the newest single, Time Wounds All Heals. This is Alex from Heavy New York.